Language death is not mainstream theater. It is not mainstream anything. Can you imagine Hollywood taking it on? It is so far outside the mindsets of most people that they have difficulty appreciating what the crisis is all about, because they are not used to thinking more about language as an issue in itself. Somehow we need to change these mindsets. We need to get people thinking about language more explicitly, more intimately, more enthusiastically. Interest in language is certainly there. In the general population, most people are fascinated by such topics as where words come from, or what the origin of their town's name is, or whether their baby's name means anything. They are certainly prepared to play Scrabble and a host of other language games ad infinitum. And language games are often found on radio and television, too, but a willingness to focus that interest on general issues, a preparedness to take on board the emotion and drama inherent in the situation of language endangerment, is not something that happens much. Citizenship education is an important subject in schools as compared to the past. However, only 1/5 of schools have such courses that provide student right skills and attitudes. In the past, people were reluctant to teach. It is important for students in this changing world. There are still problems in teaching this subject due to lack of commitment and lack of teachers to teach. Criticism about the theory of citizenship education is ineffective, unless schools themselves reflected democratic practices by giving children the opportunity to have a say over decision making. It suggests that schools are fundamentally undemocratic institutions, and that such a setting cannot instill in children the commitment and belief in democratic values that is necessary for citizenship education to have a proper impact. Citizenship education is one critical element, and students will acquire knowledge of civics, including the principles of democracy and associated local, state and Australian government structure and processes. In addition, students will also learn to participate responsibly and cooperatively in community. Citizenship curriculum is very important for students, but it is neglected by many schools. There are only 1/5 schools introduced this class to campus and allocated less time than other subjects. Moreover, the professor pointed out if given enough time in citizenship curriculum, it will be beneficial to improve students' skills and install positive attitude towards the changing world and tackle the issues such as lack of leadership. The heyday of the English landscape garden was the 18th century, and it stood for many things: the appreciation of natural beauty, of course, but also the idea of a civilized life, good taste, one's personal philosophy, and one's social status. Gardens also, though it is hard for us to credit, became expressions of their owners' political affiliations. Until the picturesque style emerged as part and parcel of the Romantic movement, gardens had been strictly formal, laid out with mathematical precision following the Italian and French examples. There then came a backlash against this rigid formality, led by, among others, the poet Alexander Pope. Pope and his allies argued for a more natural nature. Lord Burlington was a major figure in the landscape garden movement, and he was famously influenced by his love of the Italian architect, Andrea Palladio, along with the picturesque or romanticized landscapes of Italian classical painting. With these in mind, he scattered his gardens and parks with classical Greek and Roman temples and statues. In other words, he wanted to make the garden look like those paintings. Touchdown confirmed. We are safe on Mars. The control room at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory late in the evening of August 5, Pacific Time, when word arrived that the Curiosity rover had landed safely on Mars. The 1-ton rover, which dwarfs all Mars landers that came before it, will now spend a planned 2 years exploring the Martian surface. The mission is expected to cost $2.5 billion. Curiosity's task is to investigate the inside of Gale Crater, where a giant mound of sedimentary deposits may provide evidence of a wetter, possibly habitable Mars billions of years ago. But first it had to survive an elaborate landing sequence which appears to have gone smoothly. Curiosity landed on time and on target and soon beamed back grainy photos of its wheels and its shadow. Given the car-like size of the rover and the challenges of landing on Mars, Curiosity's landing goes down as one of the greatest parking jobs in history. You might picture Neanderthals as cavemen gnawing on bones around a campfire. Which wouldn't be inaccurate, but Neanderthals may have also dined on roasted vegetables and known a bit about medicinal plants too. So says a study in the journal Naturwissenschaften, The Science of Nature. Researchers analyzed hardened dental plaque from 5 Neanderthals found in El Sidrón Cave, in northern Spain. Yes, 50,000-year-old dental plaque. And they found a lot lurking between the teeth. Like evidence of nuts, grasses and green veggies, chemical traces of wood smoke, and tiny, intact starch granules, proof Neanderthals ate their carbs. And in one individual, they detected compounds found in the medicinal herbs chamomile and yarrow. The herbs have no nutritional value, and since Neanderthals did have the gene to detect the herbs' bitter taste, the researchers speculate that the cave dwellers were munching on them not as food, but to self-medicate. Not too far-fetched, they say, because primates like chimps also use medicinal plants. Luckily for the scientists doing this detective work, Neanderthals may have known a thing or two about medicine, but they didn't get regular checkups at the dentist. Dogs are not just man's best friend. Previous studies have shown that kids with dogs are less likely to develop asthma. Now a new study may show how, if results from mice apply to us. The work was presented at a meeting of the American Society for Microbiology. The study tests what's called the hygiene hypothesis. The idea is that extreme cleanliness may actually promote disease later on. Researchers collected dust from homes that had a dog. They fed that house dust to mice. They then infected the mice with a common childhood infection called respiratory syncytial virus or RSV. In a chapter of Democracy in America entitled Why the Americans Are Often So Restless in the Midst of Their Prosperity, de Tocqueville sketched an enduring analysis of the relationship between high expectations and dissatisfaction, between political equality and envy. He wrote, "When all the prerogatives of birth and fortune have been abolished, when every profession is open to everyone, an ambitious man may think it is easy to launch himself on a great career, and feel that he has been called to no common destiny. But this is a delusion which experience quickly corrects. When inequality is the general rule in society, the greatest inequalities attract no attention. But when everything is more or less level, the slightest variation is noticed. That is the reason for the strange melancholy often haunting inhabitants of democracies in the midst of abundance, and of that disgust with life sometimes gripping them even in calm and easy circumstances." How would you define reasonable as it is used in law? For example, you are allowed to use reasonable force when defending yourself. It seems to depend on how serious the situation was, whether it was possible to resolve it by peaceful means, whether you were ready to try those means, and, finally, the relative strengths of those involved. Now, most men know, and they've probably grasped this from their earliest years in the school playground, that, when it comes to blows, fights don't stop until one of you is in no shape to do any damage to the other. The criteria mentioned seem a bit fuzzy to me. How can you convince a jury you were ready to try and talk your way out of it when the other person would have none of it, and, besides, he was quick to land the first punch? Also, you can strike the first blow and still plead self-defense. Of course, you again have the problem of convincing people that the threat was so great that you had no alternative, apart from getting beaten up yourself. Reacting calmly and rationally to a perceived threat is not easy to do. By now, a lot has been said about the marshmallow test. You guys probably know about this, where children are asked, you can eat this one marshmallow now, or if you wait until I come back you can get 2 marshmallows. People talk about this in terms of the resolution that little kids have and how good they are at resisting temptation and stuff, but there's something that's often overlooked here, which is that one of the most common strategies that kids use was simply covering their eyes. Just clapping their hands over their eyes so they're not looking at the marshmallow. And it turns out that's a very effective strategy. And so when we think about minimizing temptations, whatever your temptations are in life, just think about the ways that you can actually contractually minimize that temptation so it's not there, not a fake thing or anything. Oh yeah, if it's in the back of the cabinet I won't do it, but like actually get rid of the Modern humans are masters of multitasking. We eat while driving, watch TV while studying, and of course talk on our cell phones while doing, well, everything. How do we do it? A study in the July 16th issue of Neuron suggests that though we can train our brains to work faster as we juggle, we never actually manage to do more than one thing at a time. Our brains aren't really built to handle the sort of parallel processing we think we're capable of. The good news is, studies have shown that extensive training can make us better at doing 2 things at once. But how? One theory is that with lots of practice some routines become automatic. And if we don't need to run every little thing past the part of the brain that spends time thinking about stuff, we can multitask just fine. But this new study finds that that's not the way it works. Turns out that multitaskers still consult the prefrontal cortex, But training gets the thinking brain to think a little faster. So we're actually switching tasks quickly enough to appear to be doing them simultaneously. Which is still nothing to shake a stick and sneeze at. New scientists discover new species all the time on the order of 15,000 a year. One of the latest additions to the tree of life is a new type of leopard frog. Which might sound unremarkable, except for where it was found, New York City. But how does a frog go unnoticed in the Big Apple? Well, even experts have a hard time telling this new species from its northern and southern cousins on looks alone. But the new guy has a different croak, which raised ecologists' suspicions. So they tracked down 4 leopard frog populations with a unique call, including one within view of the Statue of Liberty, and took DNA samples. As they suspected, the odd croakers weren't southern or northern leopard frogs, or even a mix. They had a genetic ancestry of their own, earning them new species status. Those results appear in the journal Molecular Phylogenetics and Evolution. The frogs are tough New Yorkers. The center of their range appears to be Yankee Stadium. But the researchers say that the urban amphibians face threats like pesticides and infectious diseases. Not to mention real-life games of Frogger. The discussion aims to make admission to school more transparent. Maintaining an adequate supply of affordable housing is very difficult. Career assistance can help students who are seeking career guidance. The school has awarded some of its most promising students